Thank you everyone for joining this webinar, Planet Technologies webinar. I'm Casey Clayton, Program Manager here at Planet. Today we'll be talking about how Microsoft 365 G5 eliminates costly third-party software. We'll explore how organizations can slash third-party software costs by more than 50% while enhancing productivity with the advanced features and capabilities of the Microsoft 365 G5 and E5 license. We'll cut through the noise and show you exactly which third-party software solutions can be eliminated across 5 key enterprise technology categories where the G5 license offers significant advantages over the G3 license, including identity management, cybersecurity, telephony and meetings, advanced analytics, and compliance and e-discovery. With me today is Guy Cavallo, who is an award-winning leader with a distinguished career in both the public and private sectors. He has an extensive track record as a technology transformation leader in government organizations, driven by his passion for improving the delivery of government services through innovative technologies. Notably, at the end of 2024, Guy was awarded the Distinguished Presidential Rank Award, the highest civilian government award, and was the only federal CIO to receive this recognition. Also with me is Demetrius Rogers, who brings over 25 years of experience in information technology, including C-suite leadership roles in both the private sector and state government. Before joining Planet, he made significant contributions as the Deputy Chief Operating Officer at the Virginia Information Technologies Agency, VITA, where he established a cloud adoption framework and policies that laid the groundwork for Virginia's innovative cloud strategies. His expertise extends to delivering IT as a service, leveraging his extensive knowledge to support state and local leaders. For more information about today's program, make sure to check out our blog on our Planet website, and we also included some useful links at the end of this presentation. So let's get started. In today's presentation, we'll start with exploring major features of the M365 E3/G3 and E3/G5 suites. We'll look at third-party alternatives to E5 and G5 capabilities. We'll discuss cost reduction through software consolidation, and we'll look at understanding licensing cost and benefits. And of course, we will save time for questions. We really want to hear about your experiences with these products and share what you have learned as well. So make sure to stick around to the end to ask those questions. I'm now going to turn it over to Guy and Demetrius. Thank you so much for joining.
All right. Thank you all for joining today, whether it's a good morning or a good afternoon. I'm really pleased with Demetrius to be able to present this to you. Between the two of us, we have over 25 years of being responsible for enterprise IT operations. So we wanted to share with you some of the important lessons that we learned throughout our career. But to get started, because Microsoft loves to keep their licensing complex, I just wanted to review what's different between the G3 license and the G5 license. Again, the G3 license gives your end users their basic office productivity suite plus online email and SharePoint, beginning Teams collaboration, Intune deployment for software. And one thing that you have to pay attention with Microsoft licensing is that they have different levels of things. So you get Entra ID P1. There is more than a P1. So whenever you see a split definition like that, what you're seeing in the G3 license is a basic rudimentary version of it, where the G5 you're going to see provides the rest of the story. It also has minimal e-discovery hold in your Windows device license. So just as a refresher, yeah, most organizations have at least a G3 or might even have a combination of G3 and G5, but this is what's included in the G3. All right, on the next slide, we're going to see what the G5 adds to it. In fact, it's going to take us 2 slides to do it because there's so much that's added. In the area of identity management, you see that we're now up to P2 of Entra ID, and we also pick up Microsoft's Defender for Identity. So this gives you a much more advanced version of identity management than you would have with the G3 license. And on the cybersecurity side, I'm not going to list all the products, but you can see you pick up about another 5 additional products that are all geared towards giving you, Defender at the P2 level for M365. So again, the advanced version, not just the basic version of what's available in Defender. This is where you filter out your email, safe links, make sure that attachments are safe. You have endpoint protection throughout your devices, and again, protects the Office applications and your cloud Office applications from external threats. So a big step up from the G3. If you only have a G3, you're missing these, or as you're going to see in our webinar today, you're buying additional products to fill in these holes. All right, let's go to the second half here. So in addition to those 2, here's 3 more advantages that you pick up. With Teams calling, you actually, with the G5, you are automatically have access to the Teams PBX in the Microsoft Cloud. Now, there are multiple ways to do telephony. One of my favorites, and one that I'm going to use in this example, is as a CIO, I wanted out of the telephone business. The same way, I'm sure Demetrius went through this too. We wanted out of the managing email business, which is why Office 365 was so popular with the IT leadership. So you get a PBX in the Microsoft Cloud as part of that G5 licensing, eliminating your need, if you choose to go that path, the need to have on-premise PBX equipment, switching equipment, or any of the other telephony. You also pick up the ability to host meetings and do them both internally and externally with Teams calling, which I'll give a little more detail a little bit later. Another favorite area that I've really leveraged is that all your users get access to Microsoft Power BI Pro, which is, for the 3rd or 4th year in a row, Gartner's Magic Quadrant leader for analytics and business intelligence platforms. So I think what you're going to see with what we're highlighting today, we're not asking you to go with a consolidated approach of poor performing products. Here, you're automatically giving your users what Gartner rates as the top of the pyramid for analytics and business intelligence platforms. And I can tell you, as a CIO, when I had to choose between where BI was so expensive, I had to choose who gets to use BI and who doesn't. You end up creating a class structure in your organization on, why does Sam have access to producing graphics, but I don't? Again, with your G5 license, every user has the ability to use Power BI Pro, creating dashboards, scorecards, and really compelling visualizations. And then in the compliance and e-discovery area, again, you go beyond the G3 rudimentary level and you pick up a much higher level of e-discovery, being able to sort, put legal holds on, safeguard information, be able to pull data for audits, be able to implement information protection and governance. So I know it's difficult to stay up with how fast Microsoft throws another feature into the M365, but I wanted to start with this so you could see what's different between a G5 today, or an E5 if you're private sector, and the G3. So we're going to focus on these categories the rest of the way. But before I get to that, let's go to the next slide. For our federal users, I wanted to highlight what's important about the G5 license. So one of my favorite laws is the Megabyte Act of 2016. I know anyone that worked for me has heard me talk about that many, many times. The Megabyte Act required agencies to do a comprehensive analysis of all their software, and with the goal that they were supposed to eliminate any unused or duplicative software applications. They also were required to track and report to OMB the cost savings and where they consolidated to better software management. Now, while the legal reporting to OMB of that Megabyte Act expired in FY22, it's still used by a lot of the Capitol Hill committees and by the FITARA scorecard and OMB guidance, that you should not be buying duplicative software. You need to eliminate it and save the money. So the Megabyte Act really drives on the federal side how you can implement the reductions that we're talking about. All right, next slide. One more federal benefit just happened in the last week. So on September 2nd, Microsoft and GSA announced a new agreement on their licensing that includes anyone who has a G5 license will get Microsoft Copilot for up to 12 months at no additional costs. So you're going to see at the end, I'm going to help lay out the impact of what that means for an agency. I know before I left OPM, we were in the process of buying Copilot for a large number of our users. Well, now Microsoft is making that available as a no-cost 12-month way to get started. All right, next one. So on this side, Demetrius and I have talked a lot about this from our management roles. Again, I highlighted the Megabyte Act, which impacted federal organizations, but having duplicate software products means that you're paying both for Microsoft licenses and you're also paying for the licenses of that other product that you use. And in some cases, one of them is sitting idle. You miss the enterprise upgrades and the integration that's available in your licensing. And Demetrius and I are both very familiar. When you have a bunch of different products in your enterprise that all have different patch cycles, different upgrade cycles, trying to keep them all integrated and updated at once is something that we've seen across all governments, very difficult for them to do. For those of you that are old enough, it wasn't too long ago where your end users were running WordPerfect for word processing, Lotus 123 for their spreadsheet, DBase for their database, and Harvard Graphics to be able to do some basic drawings. All four of those products were totally different companies, different menu structures, different everything. And one reason why Microsoft Office and Google Docs have become so popular is that it's one platform and you get one update that doesn't break every other part of it. So again, this is something, today we're going to highlight licensing costs, but pay attention. There's a high cost of operating a complex environment.
Thank you. And Guy, and I'd like to add on this. The reason why we say it's the shadow spending, it's not because you're not aware that you have a budget line item. It's just that redundancy is not apparent to all the decision makers, that's an overlapping functionality that you're paying for. So a lot of times, you have different departments, different teams with, who procure solutions independently, and those solutions are already available through your existing enterprise agreements, and that's not always readily recognized by everyone in your organization. So that's what we refer to as the shadow spending problem that most organizations have.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, Demetrius. And one example is telephony. Not every organization I've worked with does the CIO budget pay for telephones. So again, if that's outside, the CIO may never even see it. So we wanted to give you a graphic that really highlighted not just the cost, but the complexity of what we're dealing with. So on the left-hand side, we have the very nice integrated M365 G5 license. Everything works together. There's no overlap, fits together. But on the right-hand side, if I try to replace or supplement some of these functions with different products, the puzzle pieces fit it very well. I found that we were always having to tune one product down so that it wouldn't overlap with another. And as soon as you do that, that creates a gap that the hackers can exploit, especially with them leveraging AI today. So that hodgepodge on the right, while you might feel safety in numbers at first, those gaps are very real and the overlap is very real. And that actually opens you up to additional cybersecurity risks. So multiple best of breed products that overlap each other will produce gaps that can be exploited. All right, we'll go to the next one. So as part of this exercise, since I spent the last 10 years in the federal government, there was a lot of guidance from NIST and DHS on what people should use. So I wanted to highlight some of the products here that want to plant the seed with you to go back and look at what you're spending. Again, the goal today is to help you identify, are you getting the best bang for the buck of what you're spending? And since we broke these into 5 categories, I wanted to give you just some of the most common products. Again, we're not recommending these, or we're not opposing them either, just what's typically found in a large enterprise. So privileged ID management, pretty popular to have CyberArk, BeyondTrust, Okta there. Identity protection, we had SailPoint and CrowdStrike. Lifecycle management, we had ForgePoint and an Oracle Identity Governance. And then for cybersecurity, and again, we couldn't even match everything up. People will have investments in ForcePoint, Splunk, Cloudflare, Palo Alto, Wiz, Cisco, FireEye, Symantec, Proofpoint, Varonis, Cisco, Splunk. Again, you can see just in the slide, it's getting harder to manage, even to get out of the names. Now, I'm not saying that one organization would own all of these, but you might own several of these yourselves already today. Let's look at the next slide on the other overlaps. So not as long names of vendors here, but for telephony and meetings, you'll find Zoom, Google Meet, Cisco WebEx, AT&T and Verizon, Adobe Connect, GoToMeetings. I can tell you one of the agencies I took over, it's not on the list here, but we actually still had a Radio Shack telephone system in a regional office. So again, if these items are bought one-off, you end up paying over and over again for duplicative capabilities. And then for advanced analytics, Tableau, Qlik, Cognos, Business Objects. Again, a lot of government organizations I've worked with have all of those plus Power BI, and yet Power BI could allow you to save the money of buying these other ones. And then for compliance, for eDiscovery, Veritas and Relatively One are pretty popular, protecting your information and doing your governance, File Cloud, Adobe Document Cloud. Again, you can see over time, it's very easy. And Demetrius and I have this experience. Before Microsoft expanded the capabilities of G5, you had to buy some of these products to provide this type of protection. And over time, you just keep renewing, when in reality, this is a really good time in these tight budget years to look at, hey, now the G5 can take over this, and let's see what the impact is. All right, let's go to the next one. So in a lot of ways, I've got the Microsoft license here in the blue, and you've got the army of third-party products behind it. And what we're going to do next is show you the pricing differences. So to get started, first of all, I want everyone to know that I used GSA pricing back in April before a lot of the different organizations offered new cuts, but I wanted to have a level playing field. So every product price that you're going to see from here on in is based on the vendor's GSA pricing. But to start off with, I want you to pocket a number. So the difference, if your organization, and for everybody, I used 1,000 users as a number. So if your organization's bigger, you can multiply that by how much bigger it is, or if it's half as big, you can cut it in half. But you're saying when you make that initial purchase, the difference between a G3 license for an individual and a G5 license for 1,000 users is about $234,000. Now, earlier I had mentioned that I've implemented Teams phones at both of my agencies. While the PBX is for free with the G5 license, just like a cell phone, you have to buy minutes per user. And so in my example here, we're saying for those 1,000 users, we're going to buy them 120 minutes per month per user for another 77,000. So when I add that to the G5 license, the gap between the G3 and the G5, but now I have phones covered, is about $311,000. So in our next exercise, what we need to do is say, are we going to spend more than $311,000 on buying what else is in our enterprise? So picking very common products here. Again, not recommending or not saying this is what somebody would have, but for GSA pricing, if you do identity management, went with CyberArk and Okta, you're paying about $15,000 for those 1,000 users. And then for cybersecurity, again, you can see on the left-hand side, those 5 additional capabilities you get, trying to match those with CloudStrike Falcon and Netskope Cloud Security Platform, you're paying about $58,000 just for that. The Teams phone and meetings is another big place. So again, I mentioned the G5 license gives you the PBX. We spend the $77,000 for the user minutes. Everybody has a phone. If I had the Cisco WebEx suite, about $241K for that. I also need to connect it to the physical network, $18,000 for that. And again, a lot of overlap. I have $267,000 for Zoom meetings because most likely even somebody that has WebEx will also have Zoom licenses. So you can see where we're headed with this. We're going to look side by side, each of these function areas. What's a typical procurement? And we'll go to the next one and keep this going. So for advanced analytics, again, the easy choice is, do you go Power BI Pro for everybody or buy Tableau's Explorer? That's almost $500K for Tableau by itself for those 1,000 users. Again, this is all based on the April 1st GSA pricing. And then for compliance, if we went with Veritas eDiscovery, another $117,000. So bottom line, you take all of those third-party products that we listed here, added up, it's $1.227 million. Oh, but they also need the G3 license because they need Office. So we throw in $409K for that. So really, to have a G3 license and those typical third-party products for 1,000 users, the license cost is $1.6 million. But Demetrius and I talked about it. There's more to software in an enterprise than license costs. You have the administrative overhead of managing all those products. Again, if you have multiple products in the federal government, you need the ATO and go through cyber checks with all of them. You have to train your staff and users how to use them. You'll never have all the contracts line up at the same time, so you have different periods of performance, and they lead to data silos. And of course, being different products, they're all different interfaces. And then that's going to cause more help desk calls to from your end users. Demetrius, you want to add anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. And this doesn't even include your software asset management costs, your tracking costs, your operational support costs. What is it going to be for the additional maintenance costs for those activities? And also the security burden of making sure you're on the latest version, the latest patch of all of these various products that you're having. As you can see, the administrative overhead can continue on. We wanted to give a couple of examples to just show how those costs, just with things we've listed, could be up to at least a minimum of 25% in addition to what you pay for the license. So I think that's very key. Often in times we're looking at, managing that software, patching that software, make sure we got the resources to understand all that software, how to manage it and maintain it. So, we want to just highlight the fact that all the costs that we're talking about today, even though it's significant, still exclude a number of operational costs.
Excellent. So on the next page, we went with the lower number there. So we carried over the 1.6 million and going with that average of 25%, the lower part of this. Because remember, some of these products have mandatory maintenance costs that you have to pay. We know cloud vendors like Microsoft, it's all built into your monthly charge. But some of those products you have to buy maintenance for a year and upgrades for a year. So we went with the lower number of 25%, which would add $410,000 to it. Again, depending on what products you have, that number could be lower or higher, but we wanted to give you the reality of what you face. So when you add that to the license cost, we're now over $2 million to support those 1,000 users. So next, we wanted to compare it to what's that look like compared to the G5 and Teams calling. So $721K versus $2 million. Just again on the software licenses, the 25% maintenance cost. This is what you're talking about per 1,000 users. So it's a win-win to go with the G5 and get out of the phone business and use the Teams telephony that you have built in and just pay for those calling minutes. All right,
And
but we'll keep going. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, and we're all often challenged to say, where can we save money? Where can we save money? Where can we cut costs and still maintain the level of business functionality that the business or organization needs to conduct to meet their business objectives? So this was a real eye-opening opportunity where a lot of people, when they're being asked, whether it's by their senior management, whether it's by other stakeholders in the organization, where can you cut costs? This is a real opportunity. I think that folks are starting to look at and say, here's a way we can get the win without sacrificing our capability that we need to do to meet our business goals.
Right, and we know today at the federal government level, people are being asked to make big cuts like that, cut your budget by a third, cut your budget by a half. And unless you do this type of software transition, you're either going to cut projects or staff. And I know Demetrius and I would rather keep our best staff and pay less for the integrated software solution. But there's still more savings than that, which we'll cover in the next slide. So if you did make the jump from, in this example, Cisco to using Polycom Teams phone, you'll see both just the phone hardware itself on their GSA pricing. Both are color screens, both work perfectly, both have a headset for the people that handset, for people that don't want to wear a headset or talk to their computer speaker. You're saving almost $200 per phone just on the hardware. And so again, and we'll show that on the next slide. If we throw that in too, so we have the cost difference, the $214,000 that we're saving on the phone hardware. Now we're up to 1.6 million of potential savings just in the first year. But behind the next door, there's even more. So now with that Copilot offer, this is more of a cost avoidance than a savings, but the GSA advantage of getting Copilot for all those 1,000 G5 users for a year is $369,430. We put all that together and you're at almost $2 million of cost savings over third party and buying a separate AI solution and replacing your expensive desk phones with Teams and Polycom phones. So again, this is something that if we do anything in this webinar, I'm hoping that you'll go back and take a look at what are you buying. And this is a staggering amount of money for 1,000 users to save. It's something that you should look at. And again, Demetrius, I mentioned it earlier. Not only are you saving the software license cost, but the complexity of your enterprise and the cybersecurity protections of your enterprise are so much easier to manage with the single Microsoft G5 license than 10 or 15 of those other products that, again, all have their own patch cycle, all have their own upgrade cycle. Some upgrade from one of them might break another one, and then you've got to deal with the technology of finger pointing of both vendors saying it's not me, it's them. I know Demetrius and I have been through this many times. It's not me, it's them. And yet we have end users that can't use the tools. We need it fixed. So,
and I think the 1,000 users is a great baseline because it's easy to calculate. I mean, I know in my operation environment, I had 60,000 users at one point. So you take 60,000 and multiply that by 2 million, then you're in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is a great example of the significant amount of money that you potentially save.
So I'll let you in on a secret here. If you didn't know it, I worked at Microsoft for 9 years and I became an expert on Microsoft licensing. It is not easy. And part of what I'm sharing with you is that learning from that. But we'll go ahead to the next slide. The things that you may not be able to do this on your own, we wanted to let you know that for a very small investment, we can come in and help do this analysis with your tools and help you do that review of your current software and licenses. I hate to tell you, I've been in organizations where we bought software for the enterprise and it sat on the shelf. It was never turned on, but we kept paying the bill. Again, you might have things like that. Demetrius and I talked a little bit earlier. You always have somebody on the staff, let's say for these 1,000 users, there will be somebody who says, well, we need to buy 1,200 licenses because we don't know when the next person's coming in the door. So you buy 200 extra licenses that you may never use, but they're determined. And it's like, okay, but we can quickly modify the contract and add licenses. No, let's keep buying and let's put licenses on the shelf just in case we need them in the future. So we can come in and help you identify this, align it to what the G5 license provides, and help you really determine that return on investment and build your business case to make this transition. We'll review your M365, Azure, Dynamics, Power Platform licenses, and really give you an optimization roadmap. Again, this is key. The way I was able to do this in both my last two agencies is that I got the contracts, I identified what we owned, and I looked at their period of performance. And then for like telephony, we knew when we first started the project, we had about 2 months left on our contract. I knew for like Demetrius said, I had well more than 1,000 users. I had like 6,000 scattered across the country. There was no way I was going to switch to Teams phones in 2 months, but I worked with my team and let's set a target of 14 months. We need to switch all the phones from Radio Shack, from Cisco, from Verizon, from AT&T, wherever they were. We have 14 months, and we worked out a project plan and worked backward so that we could get to the point where we didn't renew that license and pocketed that savings. So some of these products, depending on where you are on your renewal cycle, you might be able to eliminate in your first year. All of them you should be able to eliminate within the next fiscal year and start that savings. So again, if you need help, we can come in and help you do this analysis and prepare your documentation. And at the bottom, Demetrius, you added this. I'll let you highlight your line.
Yeah, I think that, like God said, having these artifacts, the business alignment matrix and the process and the optimization roadmap gives you a fantastic start to being able to go to your leadership to actually show, here's our plan, here's our strategy, here's what our estimated cost savings are going to be. So, when you add all that together, the question is not whether you can afford to consolidate your technology stack around Microsoft and leverage your licenses. Really, can you afford never to realize that value of the things that you're paying for already? And so I thought that this is a very key statement, because we are often in a situation where, we own these things and we don't implement it for some reason or another. Maybe there's some legacy love there. Maybe there's some, concern over the future. And, not being able to realize what you're already paying for, it's going to be hard to justify that, as we continue in the future.
Excellent. So that will help you plan out and one thing I recommend to everybody, wherever I worked, I always went to the CFO and I said, and worked out an agreement with them. You have to build trust and good communications. If I save money out of my budget, will you allow me to reinvest it in my budget, or do I have to give it back? And every time they said, we'll hold you to it, but if you make these types of transformations and you keep it within your budget, you can keep whatever you saved. And then I would use that savings to reinvest in the migrations. So, that was something that I found was very successful, is having that roadmap, going to the CFO and saying, over the next 2 years, I can save this amount of money by doing these things. I just need you to let me keep my budget that's budgeted to pay for those products to be able to pay for that migration. So if you do need help, Planet has been around for 27 plus years now. We've migrated millions of M365 users across all levels of government and private sector. So if you need help, let's say you've got everything covered, you're already using Power BI Pro, so you don't need help there, but you're intrigued by what I presented about using Teams calling, and you want Planet to come help you just migrate the team segment. We can give you a specific cost program, a timeline for that, just to do that migration. Or if you wanted to do the cybersecurity migration, again, we can give you a plan, a cost in advance so that you can see, hey, I'm going to save $1 million. Planet's going to charge me $500,000 to do the migration. It's a no-brainer. I'm going to do it. So we have the experience to do it. We've done it a lot. And like I said, the G5 and the E5 license keep growing and growing. I said the last thing, getting Copilot for free for G5 in government. You never know what's coming, but it's proven to be a very valuable investment for that. And I will tell you that something I was not expecting when I moved my agency to Teams calling from the legacy system is we didn't think we'd have to train people on it. Well, guess what? The legacy system, to call an outside line, you had to dial 9 and 1. With Teams calling, all you had to do was dial the number. And we found that we actually had to provide training on people, telling them stop dialing 9 and 1, just dial the number like you do on your cell phone. And so we produced handouts with it. So, I mean, it actually made calling easier too. So I hope this gave you a lot of information. Again, Demetrius and I have done this in large enterprises before. I'd rather cut software licenses that are duplicated than key projects, especially in today's tight budgets. But thank you all for attending today, and we'll take a look at if we can answer some questions that have been posted. But again, thank you for attending. And Planet is very happy to help you make this transformation and save money from either your taxpayers or your stockholders. The world has changed. You're not running WordPerfect, Lotus, DBase, and Harvard Graphics anymore. This is the next step. You need to consolidate some of these third-party tools. Your cyber risk is through the roof. And again, we all know about SolarWinds. Okta, both of them had 18,000 customer breaches. The more tools you have, the more attack vectors you have. All right, so we want to see if we have any questions that we can answer for everyone.
I'm not seeing any in the chat thus far, but everyone, please feel free to ask your questions. I believe you can come off of mute as well. So definitely take advantage of this time. It looks like we do have a question. Demetrius, go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like you're asking about how do you handle resistance from product owners who may not be aware of Microsoft capabilities. I'll start there, and then Guy, you can jump in. I think a lot of that is starting with some of the education sessions. A lot of times people tend to put Microsoft in the end user facing category only, and they may not be aware of the breadth and depth of the capabilities that we kind of shared here today. And so I think if it's the owner of the solution, that's an education conversation, and then having the financial conversation and correlate with that as well. If it's an end user aspect, as you saw in the deck, the change management aspect, we do include that in our engagements to help, with the organizational change management. I've seen enough technology projects to understand that the technology enablement facet is only one significant component of that. The other half significant component is making sure the users of that technology are able to leverage it and they understand how it works. But usually for the product owners of those capabilities, the education session, the understanding of the why, and then the financial correlation of that usually will help drive that. Guy?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I ran into when I joined OPM. It was the only time in my career I joined OPM in the middle of COVID, so there was nobody in the office, and so I'm going, okay, they really need to rely on collaboration tools while everybody's working at home. Well, it only took me an hour to find out that we had no single collaboration tool that everyone could use. We were using Zoom, Skype, Teams, WebEx, GoToMeeting, and I think one other one, and yet nobody could do everything with it. So the leadership asked me, where should we go? And they had a favorite out of that list. And so I said, look, here's what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll price it out for you on what we need to get to one solution. I want to get to one solution. I want to give you the pricing. So I gave them the pricing of everything. And because we were on the G5, Teams was 0. Everybody else was more than 0. And so I showed the leadership that and said, look, I'm happy to do whichever one of these you want, but realize I don't have that money in my budget. So you're going to have to, if you do something other than Teams, you're going to have to cut other budgets to get there. They looked at the numbers and they said, we're going Teams. So again, part of it is that education of, do we want to spend money on duplicative software, or do we want to spend more on the mission of the agency or the company? And sometimes the education can be that simple as a dollar sign. Other times, I'm sure Demetrius and I have both run into program office leads who have fallen in love with a technology, most likely a technology that was popular around 2010. And now in 2025, they still want to use it. And it hasn't progressed. And those become a much longer education. But again, it's something that if you think we can help you make that story, we'd be happy to come in and tell it. Like I said, it's a difficult story for Microsoft because once you have the G5 license, they don't make additional money for you turning on all the features like we've highlighted today. So it's not, I don't want to say it's not a priority for them, but it's not as urgent as are you on the right license. But I can tell you the amount of money I saved at my last 2 agencies by going G5 and using all of this. And I mean, the other question I get is, Guy, what about too much reliance on a single vendor? I said, well, when you're a federal CIO, if any type of cyber incident happens, you will get called to Congress and you'll get to testify to a House or Senate committee. That's not something that you really want to do in those situations. And so my decision was, what's the best way I can protect this agency? And I believe going with a single large solution instead of a bunch of smaller, medium-sized solutions would protect the agency the best. So I never got called to the Hill. Why are you so dependent on Microsoft? I also didn't get called for a cyber breach because we prevented them. But if there was a cyber breach, they wouldn't have called me and said, well, Guy, why didn't you go with a single vendor? Why make it so complex? So you have to do what's best to protect your data and your infrastructure. And with today's AI-based attacks, it's just getting harder and harder to do it. So I would go with the best solution to get me there. And for me, the G5, along with Azure Sentinel and the Microsoft protections were where I felt most comfortable.
Any other questions for us? Fill them in the chat, or you can come off mute.
Well, we gave them a lot to think about, Demetrius.
Yes, I'm sure you're going to digest it. if there are questions that come up, you can please feel free to email us. Casey, you can put our email in the chat. In terms of, questions that may come up. I know when I get off call, sometimes I'm like, I'll digest it for about 15, 20 minutes and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I should ask this question. So if you have one of those moments, you can get in touch with us.
Definitely.
Hey, I'm going to come off mute just for a second. I really appreciate this. My name is David Harsh, guy I know we talked a couple days ago. And I think I had to join a little bit later in the meeting than I would have liked. So I'm going to have to go back through the recording.
Okay.
But I think that, it would help to know kind of from your perspective, it seems like you did bucket the telephony and the security, and the majority of G3 to G5 is going to be in compliance and security workloads, right?
Mhm.
And so if that's the case, I would just love your perspective on different federal agencies that you've worked with, and you might have already addressed this earlier on, but I think just maybe doubling down on it, I think would be helpful for me and maybe another person in the audience, is it's really hard to take, this conversation after an agency is already invested in a lot of different silos, right? And so now what we need to do is do a contract analysis of when are some of those contracts coming up to bid. And we just maybe, if you're open to it, love your expertise, experience with other agencies that have gone down the wrong path, especially from these enterprise solutions like telephony and Power BI and these like that's going to grow kind of organically, grassroots up. First, hopefully has an executive kind of sponsor, but some of that's more grassroots. But like most of the time, compliance and security, the starting audience and the end audience is just a few people within CISO. But it's extremely valuable to your point about if there's a breach, and we need to know that, have that purview for. So I would just love your perspective on taking an agency that's already entrenched in a bolt-on solution approach to compliance security and methodically showing them the light. You did it from a cost perspective, you did it from a value perspective, but just would appreciate any specific anecdotes, I guess.
Sure. No, thanks, David. One thing I had highlighted earlier is that, the G5 license didn't always have all these capabilities. So if you were a Microsoft customer over time, most likely you bought a bunch of third-party products to fill in the holes. And it was the right thing to do at the time. But what we're saying today is instead of just renewing and keeping the blinders on, the fact that the G5 license has so many more capabilities, and you can save, what I showed here for 1,000 users, almost $2 million per 1,000 users. And today's tight budget cuts where, we have Congress and and the federal level, we have DOGE looking to cut, 25-30% of an agency's budget. If the CIO can come to the table and say, I'm going to need to transition from a bunch of stovepipes, but if you give me time to do it, I'll return, millions of dollars of the budget and we'll be more productive and better protected. There's not an agency that would give that up versus having to cancel programs or to lay off staff. So you're right. It needs to be. It's not just a tech discussion at this level. Where I've helped customers before, and I've always done this, is you have to have a solid relationship with your financial people, your agency leadership, and explain these to them in terms that aren't techie, and terms that they'll understand. And again, does if it goes all the way to the agency leadership, do they want to spend more money on IT to have stovepipes? Or do they want to spend less money on IT and put more money towards programs? But that's where we can help you with that analysis that we can do. It's a very reasonable cost for us to come in and help you do this. What I found is a lot of agencies, and even in the private sector, things like telephony may not be in the CIO's budget. It might be in somebody else's budget. So you're not necessarily saving this money out of the CIO's budget, but you're saving it for the whole organization. And so that takes that crosswalk and collaboration with whoever owns telephony or meetings. Sometimes there's a media group or an external group that does it. Yeah. So it's so bottom line, David, you need to line up the data and look at what you're spending now, and then what would it cost to get you to the G5 and turn some of these licenses off.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things, David, I don't know if you were on with it when we talked about this, but the other point that was made is that there's often, we show, the cost of the license, but also with the additional maintenance costs that you're paying every year on those licenses. Because, question may come up, well, we already own it, so we've already made that investment, when in fact, you're continuing to pay, right? You're continuing to pay from an operational standpoint, from a software asset management standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint, and you already own these capabilities on the G5 side. So not only current cost, but then your future budget forecast cost, that conversation usually justifies itself very quickly.
Yep. Love it. Thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you for the question. And if any of you are interested, you get a chance to work with me and Demetrius on this. People that have gone through this with multiple organizations, when you deal with Planet, you have expertise like ours here that I think between Demetrius and me, we've probably got over 25 years of running large IT enterprises. And with that, we've learned lessons over time. And I would say, my last comment to people is, do not fall in love with a product and a version at any point in time. I used to love Multiplan, the original Microsoft spreadsheet. The world moved on. You can't stay in the past. And like I said, in the old days, I would have bought the G3 license and had multiple third-party products. But today, I would buy the G5 license and go with that single integrated approach.
Mm-hmm.